Good morning Year 4, and this is your maths video for if you've got this booklet on Monday the 8th of February. Now on Friday we started to look at units of measure, okay, and today we're going to start by playing a matching game. So under some of my cards you'll see that I've got some units of measure, so there I've got grams, and then under the other cards I've got the tool that you would use to measure in that unit. So here I've got a ruler. Now would I measure grams using a ruler? I wouldn't, so them two aren't a match. Okay, so let's start with this one then. So I've got the word milliliter, and we've now got to try and find what we would use to measure in millilitres. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one. Now, would I use some scales to measure millilitres? I wouldn't. Okay, so let's cover those two back up. Okay, what about this one? So now I've got a centimetre. What would I use to measure in centimetres, Year 4? Have we already seen that picture before? I think we have. So I'm going to match it to that one. We're going to use a ruler to measure in centimetres. Okay. Next one then. Let's go for this one. Degrees Celsius. What would I use to measure degrees? Let's see if we can find something. A thermometer. Brilliant. So those two match. Let's keep going then. Okay, so that time I've got grams. What would I use to measure in grams? Which card would we choose? Could it be a jug? No, let's cover those two up. Okay, what about millilitres then? What would I use to measure in millilitres? I would use a jug. And then finally, grams, we would use a scale for. Well done if you managed to find any matching pairs at home. So we were just going to quickly recap on what we looked at in the previous lesson. Okay, so here we've got a jug, and we would use a jug to measure liquid. And we measure using millilitres. And this is what we see in our book, isn't it? An M and an L, millilitres. But let's have a go at writing millilitre. Okay, brilliant. What about here then? So if I was finding the weight of something, we would work using grams. So let's have a go at writing grams. So if I was then measuring the length of something, how long something is, we would use centimetres. Let's write centimetre. Brilliant. And when we're using a thermometer then to measure the temperature, we measure using degrees Celsius. Okay, and remember, when we are measuring the temperature, we use a thermometer. When we are measuring the length, we use a ruler. When we're measuring liquid, we use a jug. And when we're measuring the weight of something, we use scales. Now, your learning question for today, Year 4, says, can I read and complete scales? Okay, so we've got to do a little bit of reading and a little bit of colouring for today's learning. So try and find a coloured pen at home if you've got one. And the first things we're going to be using are thermometers, and these measure temperature. Okay. And you'll notice here that I've got a temperature 3 degrees Celsius, and I've got to now represent 3 degrees on my thermometer. So I've got 0, 5, 10. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Oh, let's just change my coloured pen. Okay, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to draw my line there, and you might want to colour this in as well. Okay, using your best colouring. And that now shows 3 degrees Celsius. Let's have a go at the next one then. 6 degrees Celsius. How far would I go? Okay, so there's 5, so I'd go 1 higher for 6. And again, you might want to colour that in. And then finally, we've got 9. So let's figure out where 9 would be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that the pictures represent the temperature. Now for your learning today, Year 4, you're going to turn to page number 21. And question 1 is asking you to draw 13 degrees Celsius on the thermometer. And then there's a big arrow, and this is our thermometer. Okay, you've got to read the scale. It's counting up in ones to find where 13 would be. Just like what I did on the board. Okay, when you've done that, let's have a little look at question 2. So question 2 is asking you to draw lines of a certain length. And for this, you'll need a ruler, okay? Now I've got a big ruler on my board so that you can all see at home. And my measurement is 2 centimetres. So we've now got to draw a line that's 2 centimetres long. Now whenever we are drawing a line using a ruler, Year 4, we have to start not right at the end, but at 0. Okay, so on my ruler here, the 0 isn't labelled, but that's where 0 would be. So when I start to draw my line, that's where I'm going to start. Okay. So I'm going to start at 0, and I've got to draw it 2 centimetres long. So there's 0. I'm going to go all the way across to the number 2. There we go, and that line is now 2 centimetres long. If we go down to my next ruler, this time it's asking me to draw a line that's 5 centimetres long. So again, starting at 0, I'm going to go all the way across until I get to 5 centimetres. Okay. And then finally, it's asking me to draw a line that's 10 centimetres long. So starting from 0 and going across to 10. Okay, now for your activity today, we look at question 2. Draw lines of these lengths. Use a ruler. The first one has been done for you. So you can see here that it says 9 centimetres, and then it's got a line. Let's check that line's 9 centimetres. Okay, so I've got my ruler. I'm going to make sure I start at 0. Line that up with the end of the line. And if you look, now the line goes all the way across to the number 9. So that line is 9 centimetres long. You've then got to draw a line that's 4 centimetres. So starting at the 0 and going across to the line with the number 4 on, 4 centimetres. And then at the bottom we're going to draw the smallest line, which is 1 centimetre. Starting at 0 and going across to 1. Okay, brilliant. Please make sure that your lines are nice and straight, Year 4, so put your pencil against your ruler whilst you're drawing. Question number 3 is asking you to fill in the jugs. Okay, so this time we've got 40 millilitres of liquid. So I'm going to get a nice blue pen for my liquid. And you'll notice that on my jugs we're counting up in 50s. 0, 50, 100, 150, 200. And it means that each of my lines are worth 10 when we jump. Okay, but I need to get to the number 40. So count up in tens with me until we get to 40. So 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. So I'm going to then fill my jug to that amount of 40. And remember to colour in the bottom section as well. The next one is 110 millilitres. So we've got to count from 0 all the way up to 110 in tens. Count with me. 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110. And then finally, we need 190 millilitres. So count with me. 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160, 170, 180, 190. And that jug is definitely our fullest. Now if we go back to your booklet, Year 4, question number 3 is asking you to draw these volumes, and that means an amount of liquid, on the measuring jugs. So you've got to find where 40 would be, and remember, we're just counting up in tens. Okay. We're whizzing through today's learning. Well done, Year 4. And then finally, your last question for today is asking you to read the scales, telling us how heavy different items are. So here I've got a bowl of food, and we've got to look at where this arrow is pointing to tell us how heavy it is. So here would be 0, and then it goes all the way around until we get to 100 grams, because we've got to go here for grams. And if we look very carefully at this one, Year 4, you can see that the black line is pointing to the number 100. And don't forget to add your unit of measure, grams. We've got 100 grams. The next one then, we've got some cherries, and it's pointing here. What number is that, Year 4? Can you see? It's number 10, so that means that the cherries weigh 10 grams. And then finally, we've got an egg. And what is the weight of the egg? It's coming down to here. So that would be 50 grams. Okay, so let's turn back to your book for the final time today. It's asking you, how heavy is each weight? And you've got to count around the scales. And when you're counting this time, year 4, you're just going to count in ones all the way around to where that arrow is. Okay? You've got 3 to complete. And don't forget to add your unit of measure at the end. But you know I like to set you an extra challenge. So, spot the mistake. And here we've got a ruler and a snake. Jeff is trying to measure the snake. What has he done wrong? Now, when I was doing my measuring, I told you you had to start at a certain point on your ruler. And I want you to think about the point that the snake has been put on the ruler. Is that the right place? Don't forget, when you take your picture of your learning, to include your challenge as well. So let's end our lesson with a little bit of thinking about our learning, our brand new learning on measurements. Okay, so what number will we land on? Number 6. What helped you with your learning today?